If you give me a $50,000 tool, but I have no idea how to use it, it's a useless tool. Math videos are the same. In this episode, I'll talk about how to record quality math videos and, more importantly, how to teach students how to use them. Let's start by talking about the purpose and the context for these videos. So what are these videos even for? Most of my videos that I record, and this is where my own perspective is coming from in this episode, most of my videos are for online or hybrid or flipped classrooms. They are the primary method of instruction, and then in-class things, when I have them, are primarily divided to group work, review, quizzes, and that sort of thing. And then there is an interesting article as well by Noetel et al. That is a research article on video improvements on learning. See the episode description for the full citations of this and other studies that I'm going to cite. They looked at over almost 8,000 students across 105 randomized trials, and they found that videos were better used were better used when the videos were intended as supplemental instruction instead of replacing the instruction. So again, I do primarily use my own videos as primary instruction. There is already research out there that says they are more effective when used as supplemental instruction. So little disclaimers and context to start. And then something else I want to talk about in part of the intro for this is that something that's really important for these videos, before I even talk about how to make videos, I want to talk about the fact that we need to teach students how to use videos. And I think that's one of the major problems that a lot of us run into stems from this fact of many students don't know how to use videos, and that's okay. And we need to feel comfortable teaching them and talking to them about how to use these videos. So something you might want to consider is having some sort of start of the quarter, start of the semester pre-video, a video, or maybe you can talk about this in class, a video on how students should be using these videos. And of course, we need to know how we want students to use videos so that we can design our videos. So it all ties together. And I would say that even if you're in a later class and a course sequence, still include something like this at the beginning of the quarter. I've taught many class sequences where I've done this, and a student is like, oh, hey, I watched the video on how to go through these videos, and that would have really helped me last quarter. And of course, we did have that last quarter, but students are just like us. Just because they see something one time doesn't mean they're going to remember it or hear it or internalize it. So giving that every quarter is useful, even if you're teaching a course sequence. Okay, enough of the purpose and context. Let's jump into the meat of this. Now, there's two big things I want to talk about in this video, and we'll start with student engagement, and then later we'll talk about the actual design of the video with a cool finish by talking about quality and authenticity and humanity, which is a fun thing that I care a lot about. So let's start by talking about student engagement. We need to be very explicit with students about what we want them to be doing while they're watching our videos. Now, maybe that's taking notes. Maybe that's writing down questions. Maybe that's pausing and rewinding the video. Maybe that's changing the playback speed. All the really cool things that you can do with video instruction that you cannot do in in-person instruction. This is to balance out, of course, all the things that you can't do with videos. So this is very important to talk to students about, remind them about, don't just say it once. Yes, include it in that beginning of the quarter video on how to do videos, and also remind students along the way within your videos. A quick throwaway comment in the middle of a video of hey, remember you can pause the video right here and work through this problem and then see if we get the same answer. If that didn't make sense, you can rewind it, or if you already know this, go ahead and fast forward. Stuff like that. Really encourage the students to use those tools and how using those tools is going to get them more engaged, and they should be doing more than just watching. Because passive learning most of the time is not very much learning at all. Having students interact with the video is going to do so much more for them in terms of retention and what they're getting away from this. I tell my students I would love it if you, put my videos on while you fall asleep, But that should not be the first time you listen to the video. After you've gone through the video, feel free to fall asleep to the sound of me talking about calculus. But first, take some notes, write down some questions and stuff like that. Something else to think about in terms of keeping students engaged during videos, like what can they be doing during these videos, is if you having quizzes in the middle of your videos. These are really great. I've done them a couple times. I found them honestly a bit too much work for me to feel comfortable. Like it didn't feel really sustainable. But they are very, very cool. Something like if you're using H5P, there's a lot of other like mid-video quiz things that you can embed into the videos to get students to do stuff. There is a study by Gutiérrez-González, Zamarron, and Royuela that talks about video-based lectures in undergraduate medical education. And they found that while the embedded questions in these videos that I'm talking about right now, those embedded questions did not improve the watch rate. So it didn't get more students watching the video, but it did help the ones who were watching learn the material. And again, part of just that active learning, getting students to be more active listeners and watchers of videos. And then, of course, they also cite something that's probably top of all of our minds. Only 41% of their students watched any given video. And that's, kind of sad, but we kind of all know this, those of us who do record videos for our students to watch. It's something we have to think about. I'll talk a lot more about that later on in this podcast episode. So it is the sad reality. We can do things to improve that, but the reality is, right, we can't really make people watch instructional videos. This study also found that shorter videos had higher viewing rates and retention. We'll talk more about that later in the design phase, and that more students watch the videos earlier on in the quarter than later. So I think, like with a lot of things, myself included, when I think of my own work habits throughout the quarter, a lot of things, really, the beginning of the quarter is so important to do well. It's so important to connect with the students at the beginning of the quarter. It's so important to have videos be engaging at the beginning of the quarter, because that's really the most that we're ever going to have them. And again, for myself too, that's the most they ever have me, to be perfectly honest. But yeah. Something else to consider for student engagement is whether you want to include pre-written notes, like video notes for the students. I've sometimes used books that have these very easy to create, and I can give them out to students so that they're not like stuck writing out really long problems and like really long definitions. I find that was pretty helpful. I don't do too many guided notes in general, but it's something to consider adding. It can be make things a lot easier for students to get started, especially I think at lower levels. It gives them a little bit more structure that can help them take notes and reduce the amount of things that they feel like they have to write down. I think it's very helpful. Again, it is a lot of upfront work for us to provide, but maybe it's useful for you in your video planning to create these things. If you're planning for a video and you make these, well, you know exactly what you're going to be talking about, which can also help keep us on track. And again, there's a balance for tangents and videos as well. I would never, of course, do tangents in my podcast episodes, and you can imagine I may or may not do them in my videos too. And then the last thing I want to talk about for student engagement, and this one's really, really something I'm passionate about, is I think we should really be encouraging students in our videos to kind of push them away from our videos as well. And that's kind of a joke, but there's some seriousness to us. And we should encourage our students to use other resources. We should not say, this video is the one way to get our information. We all know that multimodal learning is very, very important. That's part of universal design, UDL. And we should always be encouraging students to use other resources. We should be pushing them for the textbook, for written examples and extra problems. We should be pushing them to other videos from other people. We should be showing them other websites that they can see things explained and practice, and see the material in different ways is so beneficial to students. And say yes, this may be the primary method of instruction, or maybe it's a secondary method of instruction, your videos might be, but also these are other resources that you can have, and pointing students to those is very helpful. And in this, I think one of the things that we can really do is to talk to other professors at our institutions or at other institutions who are teaching similar classes. Find out what they do for videos, and that can be a great way. I love it when I include videos, like supplemental videos from another instructor, and then my students are like, oh, I love the way that instructor teaches. I should see if they teach another class next quarter or something. And that's, I think, a really great way to connect students with other professors at your institution, and help the students find out what professors teach so that they can make sure to sign up for the classes that work the best for them as well. So that's a lot of fun, and I think helps us and helps the students, encouraging them to use other resources and talking to other professors to get information about any videos that they might use, again, provided that the professor is willing to share that. I understand some people would not want to share that. So that's the main things about engagement. We need to be very explicit about teaching our students to how to use the videos, how to be active listeners and watchers of the videos. Again, we can't control really whether they watch the videos or not. There are some ways we can try to force it, but if we can teach them how to use the videos, they'll be much more effective and much more likely to watch them, I think. The next section I want to talk about designing the videos. So what are some of the actual nuts and bolts that go into creating math videos? And so I'm going to start by talking about length. Most math videos are too long. It's very helpful to break up topics into smaller portions. I think it can be very helpful for students to have problems to complete between videos as well, so that they're not watching an hour and a half of a math lecture and then doing 1 hour and a half homework assignment or 3-hour homework assignment, whatever the case may be, right? To break things up, give them some instruction, let them do some problems too. Because again, a lot of us learn math much more by doing than we do by watching or listening. So giving them that time to put the topics and the materials into practice before learning more information can be very helpful to students. And so that's something I like to do in my homework assignments. The first 2 episodes of this podcast, we're talking about designing homework assignments, but having your homework assignments split up into portions after the videos, and then contextualizing it all at the end of the assignment is very important. So having things in bite-sized chunks is good along the way. Keep people engaged, keep people working on things, and then having some problems at the end also contextualize. I think if we zoom in too much, if we have things too much in bite-sized pieces and don't contextualize enough and don't let students apply material from different videos to different kinds of problems and see when to use what and how the different problems interact with each other, we don't want to zoom in too much. So we really need to be thinking about that. That's actually something I was going to talk about later, but we talked about it right now anyway. And a relevant study here is by, I'm not going to say the names very correctly, but Akçapınar, and Bayazit, that they did a study on recorded in-person lectures. So not quite the same as the videos that I'm talking about, but they found that in those recorded in-person lectures, almost nobody was really using them as instruction. Almost nobody was just watching the whole video and being like, okay, I got it. Most people were skipping to different places to find something for reference or skimming through the video. And here's another sobering fact or statistic. Approximately 60% of their students would only watch 7% of the videos. Sorry, 7% of a video for their recorded live lectures, for their full lectures. So again, the context for this is don't make your videos too long. Okay? The longer the video, the less of that video people are going to watch. And it's also much more intimidating for students. If they see that there's an hour-long video, they're much less likely to start it. I don't have time for that. But if there's a 10-minute video, yeah, okay, I have 10 minutes. I can look at this 10-minute video. And that's going to help, again, with getting people to watch the videos, because we can't make everyone watch the videos, but there are little things that we can do to help. So another topic of video design is we need to be aware of like what's similar between recording a math video compared to like an in-person lecture. And what is different? And of course, lectures, and maybe not of course, but I strongly believe that lectures are an outdated method of delivering information. I do still do some lectures, and I try not to do too much lectures because, from what I've heard and read, best practice in a classroom is you should never be talking for more than 10 or 15 minutes. A lot of times we have hour-long classes, 2-hour-long classes. You should still never be talking for more than 10 to 15 minutes. Students should be doing things. We should be interrupting those lectures with more things than just, does anyone have any questions, right? Students need to be talking with each other. Students need to be doing. Whenever we can move students around physically as well is very helpful. And videos are the same, which is, again, part of why our videos shouldn't be too long, because most of the time, even with all of these strategies where we try to encourage students to do active, like participate actively with our videos, they're still kind of stuck there in front of a screen. So breaking things up is going to be important. And that's kind of like a side tangent a little bit, but thinking about like what should our videos look like? And I think a lot of things are the same with how I record videos. It's like, oh, I have a section I want to cover. What are these subsections? Like if I'm talking about today I was talking about solving quadratic equations, and so it's like, well, okay, there's some very natural delineations. We can talk about solving when you can factor, solving with the square root property, solving by completing the square, solving by the quadratic formula, natural subsections. And then in terms of the contextualization, there should be a video at the end talking about when to use which one. Like, we should include that in each video, but also when to use each one at the end, and giving students a chance with some homework problems of incorporating all of that stuff too. So it's helpful to divide your sections into subsections, and you can just have each video as a subsection, just as, we would naturally subdivide our lectures anyway. So that part's, I think, kind of the same for a lot of us. And within each video, each subsection, it's very helpful to have a quick overview of what you're going to talk about at the start of the video, a quick recap at the end of the video. I find these especially are very helpful for highlighting key points. We have this expectation that students in their notes are going to perfectly identify all the most important pieces and highlight those, and they all know the most important takeaways. But it's very helpful for us to, at the very end of the video, just quickly talk about the most important takeaways. So one of the things that, again, ties into what we talked about earlier that should really play into our video lectures are the technological advantages that we have by having video. And again, this is tied to students engaging with these videos in an active way. Students can change the speed. Sometimes students say I talk really fast. In my video, sometimes students say I talk really slow. And the fact that in a video, they can change the speed, and again, telling them how to change the speed and that they can change the speed, because not everyone knows that. Telling them they can change the speed and saying that that's okay is, I think, very helpful. They can replay things, and again, telling them to replay things. They can pause things to think. Because sometimes we say things and then we just keep talking, and a student's like, wait a minute, I need to figure that out. Make sure that they know they can pause the video, and we can lean into that. When I'm recording a video, I like to show students how to do a problem, and then I like to do another problem where it's like, okay, pause the video, and I tell them, pause the video right now. Here's the problem. Well, I give them the problem before I tell them to pause the video, and here's the problem. Try to solve it. How many of them are actually pausing the video and trying to solve it? I don't know, but we have to give them the tools before we can expect them to use it. So encouraging them to use those technological advantages is going to really kind of compensate for a lot of the technological disadvantages that video lectures have. such as, they can't really work with others, they can't really ask us questions in the moment or directly interact. Again, telling them to write down questions in their notes is so huge, and having some time in class or during student hours to address those questions is really, really beneficial. So I think that's kind of how I organize each of my videos a lot of times. And then something else that you may wish to consider that I like to include whenever I have the bandwidth for it is to include optional practice problems videos. One of the cool things about video instruction is we aren't limited to a 50-minute class or an hour-long class or something. We're just mostly limited to what we have the capacity to do as instructors in terms of work-life balance, and what students have the capacity to watch. Cognitive load is a big thing that ties into a lot of these topics as well. But I don't have space to talk about that right now. Anyway, so having a video that's completely optional, it's like, you want to see more of these problems? Here they are. Sometimes I like to pick random homework problems that I know students are going to struggle with. Sometimes I just like to do more basic examples for the students who aren't quite getting it. Varying things is really helpful. And these videos are kind of fun too, because they require a lot less planning for me. Just like, all right, here's the problems I'm going to do. Let's just go do them. And I don't really have to think too hard. Well, depending on the class. Some of the classes, I have to think a little harder than others, depending on how many times I've taught them. In terms of video design, the mechanism we use to share our math is important. I talk a lot about in the last episode that writing math is important. So what tools are you going to use to create these videos? In the old days, I'm not that old, but in the old days, for me, I used a document camera. I had a document camera connected to my computer. I'd write everything on paper, and that worked just fine. Now, and then I got an iPad, and I could connect it to my computer, and that was really good. Then I moved jobs because the iPad was provided by my previous institution. Moved jobs, and I got a Wacom tablet that, again, provided by the institution to write things digitally. I cannot stress this enough. Make sure to ask your department about funding. Many places, are going through hard financial times, but you should always ask about, like, is there funding for me to get some kind of department device to make these videos? Most places that I've worked at and heard about have some funding so you don't have to buy things on your own. Now, if you already have something, some kind of tablet or writing device that connects to your computer, I think that's a lot of times the best. Writing math is very important, and being able to write digitally is really, really useful. You can do so many cool things that are very much harder to do if you're writing like on paper. Writing digitally is extremely powerful. So that's really cool and gives you access to a lot of fun tools. And I will say, in terms of like, what should you be presenting your math with? Please don't use slides or PowerPoints or anything like that. I think there's a time and a place for slides. I don't think teaching a math class in undergrad is really one of those times for slides. And again, it just really goes back to that writing math is important. Showing students how we write math is important. If we just have slides and then things just kind of go one up after the other, I think it really, really has a big disconnect for what we're doing and what we want students to do. The last thing for design in terms of mechanics is, should you put your face on the screen? I think it's good to do a lot of times. It can be a little distracting. It can take up some space, but it adds humanity to your videos, right? It makes you a person. And I don't know about you, but I'm much more interested in learning from people than I am learning from, disembodied things that, I don't know, maybe it's AI generated, who knows, right? But when there's a person behind it, I'm much more invested and interested. Our students are the same. So I would encourage you to, whenever it's possible and if you feel comfortable, to try to have your face somewhere in your videos. Even if it's just like a picture of you popped up for the first 10 seconds of the video or something, I think even that would like really add a lot for your students. And then other mechanics, what tools are you using to record your video? I could go on all about this for a long time, right? I personally use OBS, Open Broadcasting Software, that I got into from live streaming. I use that to record. You can use Panopto to record. There's plenty of recording things out there. I edit with Movie Studio, which is free and fairly easy to use. I don't edit very much at all. And we'll talk more in the next section about why I don't think you should edit that much. I don't edit at all, but if there's ever like a really big blunder and it's like, I am completely stuck, I need to pause the video, or if my dog starts going nuts and it's like, okay, I'm not going to leave this going on for a minute, right? Then I'll splice the videos together or do some small edits and stuff like that. So having software for that is useful. And then I do like putting my videos on YouTube. You could put them directly on your LMS, such as Canvas or Blackboard, but I personally believe in like open education. I believe in having things out there for students who want to learn, even if they're not my students. So I do like having things on YouTube. But again, you can host your videos wherever or nowhere as you prefer. I will say, if you want to put things on YouTube so that people have access, but don't really want to deal with all the internet trolls, you can disable comments on your YouTube videos. So if that's what's stopping you, just disable the comments, and so people can still get access to that information, which I think is pretty valuable. But again, you have every right to not post them publicly as well. The last thing I want to talk about for this podcast episode talks about like the quality of your video, the authenticity in your video, and really just the humanity. I think the humanity of us as instructors is so incredibly important. And this ties into how we record our videos. This ties into like how we interact with our students in person. When we are humans, when we are people, that helps students learn. It helps students want to learn. It is part of what brings them to class. And it's part of really our value as instructors. I talked in a previous episode about how, traditional lecture is kind of silly because students don't need us to lecture to get information. There's so much access out there for information. Students don't need us for information. Unless you are really, really high up there in terms of your specialization in your field. So our humanity is what helps our students, and that's a huge part of what they need us for. So to start this section on quality, authenticity, and humanity, I want to say that the quality of your videos matter. Now, you do not need a couple. You don't need a microphone that costs a couple $100. You don't need a webcam that is like 4K or something. You don't need the nicest equipment, but the quality of your equipment is going to matter. If your voice sounds like it's coming through a telephone from the 1990s, that is going to reduce how much students want to watch your videos. If your screen is all fuzzy, or your handwriting is messy, or things are like messy and they just don't look good, that is going to reduce the learning that your students get. It's going to make them less likely to watch the video. So that quality does matter. Do some audio tests, reduce background noises whenever you can. I know it's not always possible. Software like OBS that I use has things like noise gates and compression. Like Zoom does this too, right? A lot of these platforms do this automatically now. Figuring out how to configure those things is really going to mean a lot for your students, and it really does help them, I think. The flip side of that is, please do not chase perfection. Please do not try to make the perfect videos. Please don't restart the video if you stutter. Please don't restart the video if you have to pause and think. I think we need to be kind to ourselves. We need to be realistic. We need to focus on what matters and not hyper-focus on making things perfect. The authenticity of this also matters a lot too. Like when we're teaching in-person classes, we do pause, we do stutter, we do, not always get things right the first time. And I think we should incorporate that a little bit into our videos as well. That makes it so much easier to record videos too, when we don't set such a high standard for ourselves. And again, there should be standards for ourselves, but I find most people I talk to, in my opinion, put too much effort into their videos in this way, and maybe not enough effort in other ways. But I don't think you should really be editing your videos a ton. I think that just takes so much time, and I think it's okay to not have perfectly beautiful videos. Because that's going to tie into a point well, let's just talk about it now, is you should be updating your videos. I don't want you to use the same videos for 15 years. I try not to use my own videos for 15 years. Luckily, I haven't been teaching full time for 15 years, but I just certainly don't have videos I want to use from when I started teaching either. Every year I learn so much about teaching, and I hope that never stops. And I think we should all be the same. And again, we have our own work-life balance, but we should be updating our videos every once in a while. And what that means for you is different than what that means for me in terms of frequency. I find that my teaching style is always changing. I always want to do new things. And so sometimes it's like, okay, this is just not really supporting what I want anymore. And that's that's the criteria I kind of use for updating videos, as well as like, how much bandwidth do I have? If I'm teaching a bunch of new classes this quarter, I probably don't have that much time for recording videos. But if I'm teaching a class that, I've taught a whole bunch, and it's like, yeah, it's about that time. Let's do some new videos this quarter. That would be my recommendation. And again, just tying things into the fact that we always want more students to watch the videos, and students are not always going to watch the videos. You could have the best videos in the world, and still people will not watch it. Some people will, and some people will love it, but still, you will not get everyone to watch your videos no matter how good they are. So be kind to yourself and find what's manageable for you. And then something else to think about in terms of the humanity of your videos is like a lot of the research that I was looking at in terms of recording videos talked a lot about like, oh yeah, videos are so helpful because we can, like really focus on what matters and like get rid of a lot of distractions. And I think that there's really a healthy level of distractions in a video. And again, this ties into the humanity. I think there should be a little fun in videos. Like for example, I have my cat. He's laying on top of me right now. And I think just, some students, I think, in the middle of a video would appreciate just seeing a cat for 2 seconds. Anything like little, small, tiny anecdotes as well. You don't want to go on a long tangent. You don't want to waste their time. You don't want to really break their concentration. But sometimes when you have a cute animal or have a funny story or, maybe something silly happens out of your window or you tell them that you're baking cookies right now. I don't know. But sometimes those can wake students up. They're having a hard time concentrating and they start like dreaming a little bit. Sometimes those can bring them back and what did my professor just say? And I think that is really helpful. So bringing some element of fun, have a little fun with your videos. I don't want your videos to be too professional. I don't want my videos to be too professional. I struggle with this with my podcast, actually. Sometimes having them too professional. It's like, no, I should be having fun. In our videos, we should be having fun. We should get our students excited. We should get excited ourselves as well. And so please don't be too professional. Have a little fun with what you're doing, make some jokes, include silly pictures, have a good time. It doesn't need to be 100% all business. And again, when our students see us as people, when they can connect with us, when they can relate to us, that helps them succeed in our class and that helps them succeed in college. When they can see, oh, this person is kind of like me. Oh, this person's a little, airheaded sometimes just like me. I could be a professor. Like, that's good. We want them to be able to see themselves in us. And then also tied to like, don't worry about making things too perfect and don't worry too much about making mistakes is if you hypothetically, like me, when it was my first time teaching differential equations, if you found yourself really doubting some of your answers, this is a great time to model how students should be checking their answers. I think we all want students to do some level of self-validation. I talk way too much about that in the previous episodes on homework. We should have students do self-validation. We should model that in our videos. And it's great for us because we can make sure that we didn't make a mistake on video that we're going to have to go back and fix later. And that can be very helpful. Or again, sometimes checking problems is very, very long. Sometimes it's harder to check your answer than it is for just like a linear equation that you're solving. You can also, write some milestones to a problem. If you have a longer problem or proof, you don't have to write every step out on your notes, but just, having some milestones to check in is like, oh yeah, I was supposed to be getting this, this value, or like this equation, or this is where I go from here. If if I'm not sure what to do, having those notes to ourselves can be very helpful. So that's the closing of this section on quality, authenticity, and humanity. And with perfect timing, my cat stands right in front of my monitor to block my notes. And that brings us to the conclusion of this video. Again, the three main pieces of this video were student engagement, how to get people engaged while watching videos, designing the videos themselves, so more the nuts and bolts, and then the quality, authenticity, and the humanity that we should be putting in our videos as well. So each episode in this podcast is going to cover a lot of things. And my ask for you is to not try to do too many things. And this is true for all types of professional development, right? Anytime you go to a conference or you talk with a colleague and get a bunch of ideas or whatever, or whether you listen to a podcast, don't try to incorporate everything. That's just too much for us to do. And again, just like with our students, if we try to get them to commit to too much, a lot of times that's where things fail. So just try to come away with one or two things from this episode that you'd like to incorporate. Maybe that's going to be, I want to encourage my students and talk to them about different ways they can be active listeners and while watching videos, or I want to reduce the length of some of my videos, or I want to have more humanity and more fun in my videos while not being too distracting or like going on too many tangents. I don't know. Pick something, try it for a while. Don't overwhelm yourself. And then I want you to also think about giving yourself grace, not striving for perfection. Don't take things too personally when you see students not watching your videos, or if the engagement, like if the retention drops off, if everyone stops watching after 5 minutes, give yourself some grace. Don't take it personally. It's really not your fault. You can always do better. You can always do worse. But you can never do perfect, and people are not going to perfectly do what we want them to do. So build the best tool for your students, teach them how to use it, give yourself grace. So we'll close the episode by saying, if you know any professors or students or other people interested in math education or just education in general, if they have thoughts about these topics, I would encourage you to share this podcast with them and leave feedback on your favorite podcast listening platform. This is on Spotify, Apple Podcasts. It's on a couple other places as well. And you can always send ideas, feedback, or thoughts to me via email at jbarnett2@spscc.edu. That's South Puget Sound Community College.edu. So anyway, thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. Thank you for your time. And I'll see you in the next episode. Let me know what you think. Have a good one. Bye-bye.